Okay, party people, welcome to another video. We've got a unique special treat today, if you want to call it that, on my phone. Let's see if this picks it up. You want to say hello, Tyler?
Hello, how's everyone?
Welcome to YouTube world. So, this is what I call the proverbial ripple effect. Sean showed up today. We're going to shoot videos. And this video is geared towards guys that are trying to get into the business of auto detailing, are currently in the business, are beginners, whatever. Hopefully there's going to be a little something in here for everyone. So what we did is Sean told me that he was in contact with this guy named Tyler who is in, what did you say, Phoenix?
Yes.
Phoenix, Arizona. Very hot. What's the temperature today predicted?
Actually, it's going to be under 100 for once the next few days, which is good, but it's been miserable.
That's funny. Under 100.
Yeah.
You know what I think I'll do is I'm going to kind of hold you close to my lapel mic,
Sure.
so that it picks you up on camera. And I set the timer for 15 minutes because I do consulting.
Okay.
And I charge quite a bit of money for consulting. Part of that is because I can answer guys' questions that are very specific that will save them a lot of money because they're about to make a really big mistake as far as a business decision, for example. What I tell them is that there will always be more questions. So I have to set up a time frame because they buy my consulting services in time segments from a half an hour to an hour to whatever. So I let them know that come prepared with your questions, start with the most important questions first, and then we'll work our way through them. But just know that the time will always run out before the questions run out. So that's why I set the timer with you, is that we can give the audience hopefully some useful information, but just know you're always going to have questions.
Sure.
So it's kind of a little teaser at a level, but a few guys have reached out to you, Sean, that said, hey, it'd be cool if Darren, because I shot a video with Luke Wilson of Wilson Auto Detailing.
Right.
Hey, Luke, if you're watching. And we plan on shooting more videos, and some of the guys were saying it'd be cool if I could talk to guys throughout the country.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, shoot, let's take some questions from Tyler. And then I thought, well, let's take it one step further. Let's get Tyler on FaceTime. And let's get him directly on the camera and he can ask me the questions directly.
Right.
So you haven't prepped me, correct, Tyler? Like, I have no idea what you're going to throw at me.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I like that because I like to be challenged. And if there's a question that you have that I can't answer, then that just gives me one more area that I need to go away and find out myself and then enhance my capabilities. So with that said, what's the name of your business, Tyler?
Straight off the lot mobile detailing.
Straight off the lot mobile detailing. Sean did give me a little history about you. You kind of specialize because there's a lot of what's called kitty haulers, soccer moms. So you kind of specialize in more shorter detail segments of interiors, for example. Is that a correct statement?
Sorry to interrupt. I'd say probably right now 90% of my work is interiors. I like to say we live in suburbia, so I think everybody uses a $3 car wash and then realizes at some point, hey, my interior is trash, let's call somebody. So that seems to be a lot of my work.
Which is a good point because as I consult, because I consult thanks to the internet and literally a global economy, I can consult with people all over the world. I typically use Skype, but I can use FaceTime like this. And that's one of the things that I tell people when they're, starting out or they're having growing pains is that, hey, every area of the world is truly unique. Not only the weather temperatures, but the demographic. And what I mean demographic is kind of a cultural mindset. Like, how do they perceive auto detailing? Do they even know what it is? How much disposable income do they have? What kind of value do they generally place on their cars? So every area of the world truly is unique. And so what's important is for guys to understand their market and then adapt to the market. So what works for me and the way I structured my business doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work exactly for another guy, whether it's here in the United States or somewhere else in the world.
Sure.
So with that said, go ahead, hit me with your first question.
So the first question, we kind of touched on it when you mentioned the heat. and I don't want to make this too general, but what are your, through all your years of detailing, do you have any tips for detailing in the heat? More specifically, the biggest thing I run into is if I'm cleaning an exterior and there's no shade available, how do you handle the heat and the direct sun?
Okay. And I know that you preemptively talked to Sean about this, which is you're going to ask a question and it's going to be a generalized question. And one of my rules is that I believe that the quality of your questions will largely determine the quality of your life and the results that you get. So when you say heat and working in the heat, I can interpret that many ways. Like, how do I deal with the heat as an individual, meaning sweating, becoming overheated, staying hydrated? How do I deal with products? How do I deal with, because I think what you're really referring to is how do you manage products, because you have a problem with what's called flash drying. So you're working on hot paint, hot glass, everything's hot. You're in the direct sunlight.
Yeah.
So you spray a chemical or you apply a chemical, whatever that is, on any surface. And even if it's inside the car, it's still hot. So inside the car, it's going to be shaded as a rule, but it's still going to be hot leather, hot cloth, hot rubber, hot vinyl, everything's hot. Now, when you go on the outside of the car, you have hot paint, hot glass, hot bumpers, hot tires. Everything's hot in a different way of being hot because it's hot as well as it's in direct sunlight. So the problem with chemicals, and correct me, is that a correct statement, is that you're worried about more the heat factor in using your chemicals and how the hot paint or hot materials respond to those chemicals?
Yes, and probably more specifically would be exterior. Interior, yes, it's hot. I don't have as much of a problem there, but more like dealing with something hits the paint and immediately dries, especially if it's a darker color.
Right.
Managing that.
So that is the point, is managing. So literally, we could simplify life in two ways in this moment, as problem solving and managing. Often you have a problem. In this case, you're trying to figure out how to deal with working in direct sunlight on hot cars. So there's the problem. Sometimes there's a very specific answer to the problem. Often the problem really, the only answer is really just about managing the problem. So in this case, it's really about management. So you accept that the paint is hot, the glass is hot. So let's pretend we're talking about paint. So let's start with the basics. You're washing the car. You have to introduce some type of water or no rinse or a waterless type of product to the paint. Well, because it's hot, you have what I call flash drying. So you'll spray something directly onto the paint and it's going to instantly flash dry because the paint is so hot. Well, so there's two things that you can do. One, you can cool the surface down first. So, for example, if I'm required to polish paint in direct sunlight, what I used in the way back machine before I had the products called CSI that I'm now a partner with and I promote, is I would literally take a big bath towel, some kind of big cloth, and I would cover up an area of the paint that I knew I wanted to polish, and I would allow it to cool down. So the second I'm ready to attack the paint with the polisher, I'm going to move that towel, and so it will have allowed that paint to cool down 10, 15, 20 degrees, and I can work that section. It's going to continue to heat up the second I pull the towel away, but it gives me a little bit of window room that I can operate in. So that was one of my strategies. The second strategy is you just use more product because you have to compensate for it flash drying. So you can also just use more product, and that's where I say is you have to nuance the moment or finesse the moment. So the amount of product that you use in direct sunlight is going to be different than the amount of product that you use in a shaded, cool surface. The third thing that I could tell you is that in trying to cool down the surface, I will keep a bucket of water. I use distilled water because I can allow distilled water to dry directly on the paint, and it will not create any bad water spotting. So I keep a bucket with a nice chenille wash mitt on it, and I can cool the surface very quickly that way. And I will just literally spot treat or spot detail each section as I cool it off as needed. So there's 3 options for you that will perhaps help you in dealing with the heat. For most guys, what they would say is just get a canopy.
Yeah.
Use a canopy. And I say, well, okay, I tried a canopy like twice, and it's a pain in the butt because I've got this big bulky canopy, and I know they make them lighter weight now, and they've engineered them so they're easier to assemble and disassemble because they're all one unit, and you just kind of pull them apart and that whole thing. But the problem with canopies, just like everything else in life, it's always about trade-offs. So now I'm carrying around one more big bulky thing in my van. So if I'm already constrained for space, that becomes a problem. Secondly, it adds to my setup and takedown time. Thirdly, I've yet to see a canopy that fully covers a car completely from the sun. So there's still going to be parts of the car that are exposed to the sun. So now I'm either going to have to reposition the canopy as I'm working, which, okay, is fine, or I'm going to have to lower the canopy so low that the sun's not able to cast some sun into or onto the car because the canopy's too high, and the canopy's got to be high enough because you don't want to be ducking around trying to work underneath the canopy. Then past that, when let's say you have a 4-door car or an SUV or a van, and the back deck lid opens up and now the canopy's in the way, or you open the car doors and now you realize they want to hit the posts of the canopy. So I just came to the conclusion very early on, you know what? It's easier for me to manage the heat and the temperature and work in the direct sunlight and not have to deal with the canopy. So that's my view on a canopy. But I guarantee there's plenty of guys out there who say, dude, just get a canopy. Okay, well, and never mind the cost of a canopy. Let's say you're on a shoestring budget and you still don't have money for a $500 canopy.
Sure.
So anyhow, so go hit me with question number 2.
All right, the next one has to deal more with, I'd say, impossible customers.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah.
I took a phone call the other day, and I spent about 30 minutes with this lady, which was too much time. I was trying to be professional.
Right.
And it got me thinking, usually I can screen them out prior to even showing up. But what do you do in the case that you call someone, they seem cool on the phone, price is good, and then you show up and either you don't want to deal with them, or say the condition of the car is far, far beyond what you budgeted time for, and it's not going to even be worth your money? How do you handle that situation? Do you turn away the work, or do you do the job anyways and suck it up? What would be the best strategy to handle?
That's a great question. And looking at the timer, we have literally less than 2 minutes left, but I'm going to answer this question for you the best I can, and then we'll just stop it there. So there really is no right or wrong answer. For example, a guy like me, and clearly it sounds like you have the skill set where you can manage and assess very well on the phone, but you still have these moments where you roll up onto the job and suddenly this person literally can be a completely different person.
Yeah. And
now the conversation that you had on the phone almost becomes irrelevant. And you're thinking in your head like, okay, WTF, what happened? We covered all this on the phone, and now here I am looking at your car. So there's different ways I have in managing that on the phone. Price is one of them, which you said that you came to a conclusion or a consensus that like, okay, this is the price, and this person was okay with it. But also what I do with that is I force people to rate their car. And this is where technology is cool. Often I'll have people take pictures and I instruct them to say, okay, most people take pictures and they try to highlight the good features of, let's say you're taking a selfie or a group picture. It's like, okay, everyone smile. Oh, wait, that guy had their eyes closed. You got to retake the picture. So we're trying to capture the best moment. Okay, with a car, because pictures can be very deceptive. So what I instruct my customers to do is like, okay, pretend that you're trying to disparage your car. You're trying to highlight just how bad it really is. Go with that, which is the reverse of what most people take pictures. Do that and send me those pictures. But still, pictures can be very deceptive. So, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
I just had a quick question. I used to do the picture thing a lot, but it seemed like it kind of became cumbersome, as in people would call me and want quotes, and I'd have them send me pictures, and then it never equaled work. So I kind of stopped because I feel like I'm doing all this work for...
wasting your time.
Yeah.
And that's where you have to just decide. Everyone's going to have to, and that's why I said there is no right or wrong answer for this. There is no definitive answer for this question of yours. That's where you will have to investigate and figure out what works for you, your communication skill set, how you're able to truly assess people. And I just have come up with different tricks. And one of the tricks, as I was getting to, is not only do I maybe ask for pictures if I feel that the situation warrants pictures, but what I do is I never give a finite price over the phone. I always give them a price spread. So that allows me wiggle room when I get there. But on the phone, I also say, okay, when I've clarified with them, I'm looking for a full detail versus an interior detail. I will say, okay, what's your biggest priority? The exterior or interior? And you're going to get different answers based on, and this is kind of gender specific also. Women generally, they're more worried about the inside, men more worried about the outside. So then I say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst as far as condition. So 10 is like you should just take some lighter fluid to your car in a match and just light it on fire because it's that bad. 1, and you can play whatever side of the game you want, which 1 is the worst, 10 is the best, whatever works for you in your world. But you get them to attach a very specific number to it. So if they say that, okay, my car, the interior, let's say you're doing a soccer mom's van and all you're going to do is the interior and you just quoted them a price. And usually I ask this before I quote them a price. I tell them that my prices start at, let's say, $200 just for an interior, but they can easily double that if it's a van or an SUV and they haven't had it detailed in 5, 6, 7 years. They've got multiple kids, whatever. So I say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, let's just go the opposite. Let's just say 10 is showroom condition. 1 is lighter fluid in a match. Mrs. Customer, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the inside of your car? And they'll usually say something like, well, you know, it's pretty dirty, but it's not too bad. I'd probably give it like a 7. And you're like, oh, 7. Well, that's not really that bad. That's not what I'm going to say to them. That's just going to be what goes through my mind. Maybe what I'll say to them is like, okay, 7. Doesn't sound like it's too bad, but it sounds like it could definitely use some TLC. They will usually respond and saying like, yes, it can. That's why I'm calling you. Okay, thumbs up on that. So when you get there and now you're looking at what they have determined is a 7, and you're thinking, okay, they nailed it. This is what I would call a 7 also. Often what I will find is that a 7 really is a 3 in your world, in my world. Yeah. And you're like, oh my gosh, you're calling this a 7? I would hate to see what you would call a 3. Because if this is a 7, clearly something's wrong here. So it tells me one of a couple things. One, they're either misrepresenting and they're trying to get more work out of you without attaching the real price to it or an appropriate price to it. So there's that. Or secondly, they just may have very low standards. So based on the other communication that you've had with them, you're probably going to come to one of two decisions there, which is, okay, I think they're just trying to manipulate me in the moment, which that's a whole nother can of worms, and you've got to respond appropriately, and you have to dig in harder and deeper when you feel that someone's trying to be manipulative and trying to get basically free work out of you by misrepresenting how dirty their car actually is. But let's say it's the opposite, that you realize, you know what, their standards may just be not that high, which is the good news. Because if they put that at a 7 and you think it's a 3, then you know that you're going to amaze them with your work because their standards are that low. So that's one of my ways of managing customers and managing the moment of realizing, okay, I just rolled in. Do I really want to roll away and not make money and not have money in my pocket? And that's why I say there is no real answer, because every guy will have to make up that decision for themselves. I think there's maybe been 2 situations in my entire career that I've actually rolled away and not done the job. In fact, I have a video on it. I think it's called The Power of No. And it was a guy with an Audi, a black Audi. And that was one of the closest times to actually rolling away. I didn't. But I was able to dig in really deep, really get in his face and be just very direct with them and say, you know what? What you expect is not realistic. And I'm going to tell you why it's not realistic. I said, but the real shame in that is that I know that I can perform and do a fabulous job on your car, but I can tell that there's not enough trust that's going on here. Because if you trusted me to the level that you should, you would not be asking and scrutinizing your car the way you're doing it in this moment. So the more direct I got and the more he started sensing that I was willing to pull away, because I told him, I said, you know what? I'm beginning to think that you and I are not a match. I'm beginning to think that I just need to roll away and just accept my losses, that I spent the time to travel here and I'm going to go away. And 2 things are going to happen. I'm going to go away with no money in my pocket, and you're going to go away and your car's going to still look the same as it does right now, which is unacceptable. That would be a shame, because I know I can perform on your car. So that's part of human nature that I understand and I use, which is the second people start sensing that something can be taken away from them, they immediately attach. It becomes this emotional attachment, which is like, wait, it's what I call the push and pull. You start pulling away, they automatically want to pull towards you. And so when he started sensing that I was going to drive away, suddenly he starts changing his talk track, and it became like, well, you know what, Darren, you're probably right. Let's just do it. And I did it. I made really good money, and the guy was amazed, could not believe the results. So it really is a case by case. You know, when you're first starting out, you're more desperate, you want the money, you put that time and effort to go out there. It really sucks driving away with no money in your pocket. So this is where communication skills and being able to read people and to basically manage their expectations and manage them into what I call submission. And that's not me being like some kind of dictator or a-hole. It's just that people can be pretty quirky. Bottom line, we can be pretty quirky people. So how do you create a win-win? And that's where communication skills comes in, where you dig in, you feel like, okay, what are their real pressure points? What do they really want in this moment? Are they trying to manipulate me, or they just don't know what they want, or their expectations are simply unrealistic? So that's where learning the skill sets of communication and dealing with people and reading people and being very flexible, so that you can operate within these kind of quirky people and still create that. You've got to, and sometimes you have to teach them. It's not really teaching them, it's informing them. It's educating them so that they can then place value on what you can deliver as a person. So once you can establish that value, you can then establish a price point to it. And then you can hopefully create a win-win in that situation and never have to roll away without putting some money in your pocket. Sometimes what I'll tell people is like, you know what? Perhaps this is just unrealistic in this moment. I don't assign blame, because that's going to put them in defensive mode.
Sure.
So I just keep it ambiguous and just say, you know what? Perhaps this is an unrealistic moment. What if we did this? What if we just attack the most critical part? So let's say it was a soccer mom and she wanted you just to do the inside of her car. but you realize she's starting to change her talk track, and now you're beginning to think like, shoot, maybe I should just walk away because this ain't gonna work. So maybe you could say like, okay, let's break down the inside of your car. What's the dirtiest parts of your car, and what is the most important parts of your car? And she clarifies that for you. Say, well, tell you what, since I'm here, you are prepared to sign on to my services at some level. Let's just keep it simple. Let me do this. You attach a price to it. So now you've gained some additional experience in working and dealing with quirky people. Secondly, you're going to gain some experience in cleaning these specific areas. And thirdly, you're going to actually walk away with money in your pocket and hopefully a very happy customer. So that's something I would offer in those moments. And Sean's going to add something in closing.
Actually, I'm going to stop right there and restart my video because my video is about to shut down.
Okay, well, we've already gone well over our time limit. So with that said, this video will probably take about a week or so to go through the editing process and uploading process. I'll have Sean reach out and let you know when it's uploaded, but you can keep an eye out for it. Hopefully you've learned something along the way. And with that said, Tyler, it was nice meeting you. Stay tuned in, and I wish you all the success in the world.
Thank you very much.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
Take care.
Bye now. Okay, guys. Hope that you have learned something. I just said goodbye to Tyler. If you learn nothing else, it's a couple things. One, there's always going to be more questions, and the answers really, very few questions in life can be simplified down to one single conclusion or one single answer. And that's where the details come in. And I know a lot of guys get irritated because it's like, wow, Darren, your videos are so long. It's like, well, here Tyler is in Phoenix, Arizona. He's just starting out. He's only been at it a few months. And you know what? He's the guy who's got to roll up and deal with these customers. So he'd probably be willing to spend 4 or 5 hours on the phone with me.
Oh, yeah.
How many of you would endure a 4 or 5 hour video? Well, you probably would if you were trying to make a living at it and your livelihood depended on it. So once again, the devil's in the details, God is in the details, and the answers are always in the details. But if you don't have the discipline and the tenacity and patience to stick and endure and learn the details, then guess what? Your life results will reflect that. So I'll just close there.
Yep.
I'd like to do another video like this in the future and do more of them.
Agreed.
If you guys, I don't know, heaven forbid if I say reach out to you, but we'll figure it out. I'll let you dictate the moment.
Well,
anyhow,
they can message me if they want. I don't care.
You can message Sean.
Yeah.
He's an easy find. Blue Tech Mobile Detailing is his YouTube channel.
And also
he's on
Instagram.
Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram.
Is it under Blue Tech?
Blue Tech Mobile Detailing.
And tech is spelled T-E-K. So it's Blue Tech Mobile Detailing. You can reach out through him. He and I think this would be cool to kind of do this once a week.
I agree.
We'll see how it goes.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Until then, always check the links below the show more box. By all means, give it a thumbs up. If you learned something, give it a thumbs up at the very least. But more importantly, tell us what you learned in this moment. I don't care what you learned. Even if it has nothing to do with detailing, I just want to know what you learned or gathered along the way. Leave that in the comment box below. With that said, we'll end there, and we will see you on the other video.